The elemental monsters were an introduction in Season 4 Part 1 of Dragon's Rising, serving as a mindless army made of pure elemental energy as a byproduct of the unstable merged lands, and honestly, I really do like them as an addition. They served as a very interesting challenge for the ninja. The ninja without their elemental powers were certainly in a more weakened state, but what was more interesting about it is that they were using the elemental powers, and the only way to actually counter them was with elemental powers as well, so the ninja definitely did have a hard time throughout the course of the season. But there's a lot more to them than simply that, and that is actually what I want to cover today. Talk about the 5 variants of elemental monsters that we've had in Season 4 Part 1. Talk about what they were capable of, and talk about, just simply put, why I really like them. But also cover the unfortunate side, being the unfortunate and worrying future that I think is upon us when it does come to them. So let me not waste any more of your time, and let's talk about the elemental monsters. I've already described who they are in a more general sense, but let me reintroduce you to all of the elemental monsters on an individual basis. For one, let's start with the acid monsters. They are a snake-like elemental monster that embody the corrupted elemental power of water, which is honestly very, very deceiving because I was convinced it was going to be acid. The second elemental monster are the Earth monsters, embodying the corrupted version of Earth, even though it seems to come out more like a tar-like fashion, and I do think that's kind of resemblance in the fact that its initial name was the Tar Monsters, but I digress. You have the mutation monsters, which embody the corrupted version of life, and honestly, this was one of the more interesting ones, because initially I didn't know whether or not it was meant to be life or poison, but it was the fact that it does share the same sound effects as Lloyd that did tip it off for me. The fire monsters that embody the corrupted version of fire. And last but certainly not least is the elemental ice monsters that embody a corrupted version of ice. Now, the first thing that is immediately worth noting here is the fact that lightning is missing. I don't think this is for any particular reason, and also I do think it's probably because they just didn't have them in the sets. But I do think it was worth noting the fact that one of the main elements from the ninja team is missing. Also, obviously, Quake, Tech, and Heat, but I do think Lightning is a much more significant one in this instance. But I don't think it's meant to symbolize anything in particular. I don't think it's meant to symbolize the departure of Jay, his shattered goodness, or anything of the sort, because I just don't think it's overly significant to the plot, and it just simply wouldn't really make a lot of sense. But like I said, I thought it would just be worth bringing up Lightning because of its significance here. But back to the ones that we do have, they're all actually capable of the exact same things whilst channeling different elemental powers, and they're actually capable of a great deal of things. They are the elemental embodiment of the respective elements. They're not a physical being by any account, and that is actually shown by the fact that they are able to be recalled into the Weapon of Desolation. They don't embody a physical form inherently. They also have elementokinesis. They are able to manipulate the elements, of course, in similar vein to how an elemental master would. It is very fun, and they all actually have different way of doing it. They may shoot it from their own breath, or may fire it like a ball, or have a blast or a beam. There are many ways they were able to do it, but they all do share the ability to do the exact same thing with their elemental powers. They have superhuman strength. We've seen them be incredibly strong. They've been able to pick up heavy objects. They've been able to pick up humans. They've been able to do basically anything. Also having superhuman durability. They are very, very capable of standing up against anything that is against them. Any sort of physical attack they can actually withstand without any form of damage. But that does lead into another ability. They have immortality. Because they are created from the imbalance of source energy and by the Weapon of Desolation, they cannot truly be gone. They cannot truly be defeated, because as long as the weapon is active, they will just continue to get up or resummoned once more. They're truly an army that cannot be stopped. But you may think, hey, that's enough, they don't need anything more. Wrong. They're able to change basically at any point due to the Weapon of Desolation. If Beatrix so wills it, she is able to empower all of these monsters to give them more strength, more defense, and even to change their very size. We have seen definitively that Earth monsters and mutation monsters were able to get bigger when empowered, presumably meaning that all of them can do that if they so want to. They can also take different forms, like they can become spherical if they would like. We mainly see that with fire and ice, and they're even able to deconstruct their very being into very small individual balls to actually remanifest themselves elsewhere. Essentially teleportation. They have so many abilities that aren't acknowledged, and it is absolutely crazy. The last things that we also do know about the elemental monsters is that they do also have immunities to things that regular elemental masters would not be immune to. It has been confirmed by Doc that they are immune and unaffected by Vengestone, meaning their powers will not be stopped, and they are also immune to Chronosteel, meaning that their powers cannot be absorbed either. Again, this does make sense because of the origin of their elemental power and the imbalance of them, but it does go to show that they cannot be defeated like a standard elemental master, which is actually quite scary in retrospect. But if there was one way to describe these guys, it would be overpowered. They literally can do basically anything, and they only have a very limited number of weaknesses. For one, like I said, elemental powers can destroy them, so can Aaron's object spin jutsu, but I honestly am questioning whether or not that is actually quite consistently good because of the limitations of that. But of course, the only other known weakness is the Weapon of Desolation itself. The weapon can of course command the elemental monsters and can turn them back into the weapon or redeploy them elsewhere. They are completely at the given will of the person who handles it. But that is literally it. There is no other way to defeat these guys. And again, that is extremely scary. They are honestly so much more powerful than you could ever realize because they have all of these strengths and can be created en masse. But that is what they're actually capable of. The other question is, what do they actually do with this capability? Well, basically whatever they like unless they're commanded by the weapon. The thing is that they're just mindless beings of corrupted elemental energy. They don't have a directive, they don't have a motive, they don't have desire. They just want to simply destroy what is exactly in front of them. Which is, again, very interesting because beings of such power are capable of so much and basically do so little with it. Beatrix does take advantage of this and does command them to storm Empyrean, which does work and is very effective because of how strong they are, but beyond all of that, we just know that for a majority of the season, they were just going about from land to land and just going at people as they so desire. I'm honestly very inclined to believe that there are many places within the merged lands that had no defense against these guys that probably did have a rough time, to put it lightly. I honestly expect that these things honestly cause a whole lot of carnage. But I honestly think that concept is just inherently really cool. I think there is so much cool that does come from that. These were enemies that the ninja couldn't defeat. These are enemies that the ninja struggled to defeat, and it was cool to see them do their best to avoid them, or to get away from them, or to just to try and fight back. It was really interesting to note that the ninja were just doing their best. They of course do find their own solutions, whether that's by temporary elemental power, pushing through their elemental power, or just simply attacking until they left. But the thing is that it was just really cool to see that they were something that really gave the ninja a run for their money. Something that a lot of enemies don't really give the ninja. So it definitely just felt very refreshing along with the loyalists. But this is actually where a fairly major problem, in my opinion, does come to be. Because, of course, in the summer 2026 wave, in the Season 4 Part 2 set, they have put a lot more emphasis on the elemental monsters. They are in near enough all of the sets, and they are a very prevalent part and are presumably going to be a big aspect of Season 4 Part 2. So it does beg the question of, what are we going to be doing now the ninja essentially have their powers back? Of course they haven't got them back really in the permanent sense, but Lloyd is able to empower them to give them their own elemental abilities. So it seems to be that we're looking at a case of one of the main weaknesses of the elemental monsters actually being something more easy to access. So it begs the question of, will the elemental monsters be ruined come Season 4 Part 2? Will they basically just become another enemy that the ninja just knock over at any given whim? It is a very curious question, and I'm very worried to know the answer. But I do think as it stands, we're going to be getting a mix of the both of those. I do think the outcome of the elemental monsters come Part 2 will be enemies that the ninja are able to defeat more easily, but also enemies that we're probably going to see in a lot more bulk. Still give the ninja a run for their money, just not in the more convenient sense. I think they will become the most prevalent in terms of their threats if any of the ninja are separate from Lloyd. If they're going to continue with this idea that Lloyd is the one powering the ninja with the absence of the Source Dragons, I'm assuming the way to give the challenge back is just to simply not have Lloyd there. I think think it would work and would definitely lead to more interest in fight scenes, but on a general sense, the ninja will be able to take down the monsters more seriously. Think of the Stone Army. Initially speaking, when they're introduced, the ninja physically aren't able to defeat them. They're able to slow them down, but that is basically it. The ninja then get the elemental blades, and they're officially able to take down the Stone Army. But they still do give them a challenge. They do still have a moment where they're able to win, able to fight back. I think that's going to be what we see with the elemental monsters. I don't think it's the best solution, because I really do think one of the best things that came from the elemental monsters was the fact that they were something that the ninja can't stop. But this is at least a compromised version that'll allow the ninja to have elemental powers whilst also still having them be worthy of the fight. I am just generally worried that they're not going to be able to do this though. I'm worried that they're just going to become the next wave of villains that the ninja just knock down at any given moment. I really don't want that to be the case, because I really do think these guys are quite fun. And I think they definitely did earn their spot in Season 4 Part 1. But again, I just don't know how they can move forward if the ninja have elemental abilities, especially considering that was the main premise of it. But I think that is just a bit too negative to end off the video on. I do thoroughly stand by it, and I do think it's a very valid worry and complaint, and I would love to know what you guys think, but I just don't really want to end off a video where I'm meant to be positive on something like that. So, to end things off, I thought I would give a fun little ranking. The 5 elemental monsters and how we saw them ranked from worst to best. And I will say, I like all of them, and I also really like all of their minifigures. So when I say the 5th one, don't think that's me saying it's bad. It's just simply the worst of a best bunch. Coming in at 5th place for me, and the worst of the lot, is going to be the ice monsters. This is just mostly down to the fact that we don't get overly too much of them, but I do still think they're very cool regardless. I like the design, I like how they flow, I like all of the ice coming off of them. It reminds me a lot of the Blizzard Samurai, and I just think they look generally quite fun looking. And I will say though, the only other detractor that is there when it does come to it is that it is very similar in its design to the fire monsters, and I like the points for originality. So that is why it's going to be going at number 5. But speaking of the fire monsters, they are going in at number 4. Again, the fact that they do share design elements is a big factor for me, but I do still really like the color palette here. All of the fire coming off of it, having all of the black charred aesthetic as well, I think is also amazing looking. Again, reminded me of the fire warriors or the fire serpents from season 11. I really do like how these guys look. I think they're just really cool, but I just wish they had a little bit more to actually do. Taking the number 3 spot, honestly this was very difficult, but I'm going to be giving it to the Acid Monster. I really like this design, I genuinely really do think it's cool, but the only detractor for me is that I look at them and I think of Pythor, and that is the only thing that I can actually say that's negative about it. I love the sounds that it makes, I love the translucent green on them with the purple, I like how much of a fight they do give up. They're also the first elemental monsters that we do see on screen, so extra points for that. But I really do like the aesthetic of these guys, and I really do think that they're quite fierce. Also, in the summer set, they are seemingly getting a leg printing variant, and I would love to actually see that within the show. So yeah, number 3. Coming in at number 2 is going to be the Earth Monsters, and I have to say, I really do like the aesthetics of these guys. That tan, sandish, dirty-like colour, along with the translucent orange, is amazing. The pincer claws and the giant mohawk is also an absolutely amazing touch, and their big variant is absolutely amazing looking. Looking a lot like Cole's Golem, which makes sense because it's the same elemental power, it just does look really fun. I also do like the look of the elemental power. The elemental bolts that do look like tar but still look like earth are really cool to see, and I really do like how they look. Honestly, these were some of the more fun ones that we got to see, and again, I'm very much hoping that we do get to see them in the future. Which leads us into the number 1, which is going to be the Mutation Monster. And I honestly do think this one kind of goes without saying. We got the most time with this monster. It was the main part of Umbra Sylvis, but I really do like the design. The giant head with the one eye and the hat I think look amazing. And then the Doc Ock-like spider legs to go along with it I do think is amazing. They also were clearly very smart in a fight because they actually did manage to take down Ryu, which I do think is worth note. But I like the sound effects, I like the green, I like the branch aesthetic to it as well, and their bigger variant also does look absolutely amazing, which by the way, you can get a Lego version of it on Pick a Brick, but you didn't hear that from me. But anyway, I really do like these monsters. I think they look absolutely astounding, and they definitely do feel like the main one to me, which is obviously ironic considering life. But yeah, they are by far my favourites of the lot. But with all of that out of the way, I honestly do think that we had some really good villains in this season. I have made a video about the Loyalist, and if you haven't seen that, I would recommend you do so. But I do think this is just a really good palette when it does come to villains. I wish we got the Lightning one. Apparently it was scrapped, but I don't know. But I do think that we did have something great. And this is why I want to know what you guys think. Do you like the elemental monsters? Do you think we had something good with these guys? Do you hope they come back? Are you worried about them coming back? I would love to know what you think, because I do think it is fairly interesting. But thank you very much for watching, and I do hope you enjoyed. And if you did, please consider subscribing. I love discussing Ninjago with more people. And if you do want to support the channel any further, which you do not have to, you could always become a channel member and join the legends that you see on screen. Each of you, your support means the absolute world to me, and I cannot thank you guys enough. But yeah, take care guys, and I hope you have a lovely day. Okay,